Hey, Joe Zarzaur here for another segment of Zarzaur Law TV. Today we're going to talk about delayed diagnoses following a motor vehicle accident. I recently had a potential client call me, and they basically said they had a wreck, there was a lot of stuff going on, COVID was happening, they went to the doctor, and they thought it was just a sprain or strain, like we've said in other videos. That's generally what you get as far as the diagnosis is concerned, because again, the ER is not there to diagnose you after a car wreck. They're there to make sure you don't have something life-threatening or limb-threatening. And if you don't, you end up with a pretty generic diagnosis: cervical strain, lumbar strain, that kind of thing. But what happens if you take that initial innocuous sounding diagnosis and then a year later you realize, oh my gosh, wait a minute, this wreck has actually caused a tear in a ligament, or I'm going to need rotator cuff surgery, and the shoulder situation never really got better. It wasn't so bad that I needed to get a lot of treatment initially, but now I have what looks to be a very serious or serious car wreck injury that I didn't act on immediately because for whatever reason, and I want to know if I have a case still. Well, the answer to the question is you could still have a case. In Florida, unless you're involved in a wreck with a government-associated vehicle, you have 4 years to bring the case, okay, as long as it's not a wrongful death case. You have 2 years in a wrongful death situation. But there's 4 years to bring a negligence case against a private individual relating to a Florida accident. Now, what that means basically is that you can bring the lawsuit anytime between the date the wreck happens and the 4-year anniversary of that event, right? It generally means the day before, because you would have to file it before the statute would run, and so that would be the day before the 4th anniversary of the event. Now, it doesn't help your case that there's a big gap between the time when the wreck happens and the time that you make the connection, but as long as there's no intervening wrecks or trauma to that same area of your body, and as long as we have some idea that there was an injury initially, then we can generally piece together, using the medical records, the medical causation portion of the case, and usually can make out a case of liability and medical causation for the client. So the short answer is it's a really in-depth sort of deep dive into the medical records to see exactly what you were complaining of. For instance, in this case that I'm speaking of, we had some initial treatment where the potential client actually did complain about his shoulder, but he thought it was okay. He continued on with his daily activities, and because of COVID and because of other family commitments and work commitments, he didn't go to the doctor and follow up with the orthopedic surgeon to check the shoulder out. So it wasn't until 10 months later that he actually had a scan or an MRI, and it showed this tear in his shoulder. And he worried because it had been almost a full year by the time he got the diagnosis of a rotator cuff tear. And so it's all about a process of elimination at that point. Well, you know, my questions for him were like, did you have another wreck in that 10 months period? Did you have any other falls or trauma to that shoulder in the 10-month period? Were you doing any kind of crazy activity or hobby that would have potentially caused this tear? We have to eliminate all other causes, right? Because you don't have a timely diagnosis. But you can do that. And in Florida, you just have to prove more likely than not that the injury came from the wreck. It doesn't have to be to the exclusion of all other causes. It has to be more likely than not. So, if you have a delayed diagnosis in a car wreck related injury and you're concerned about whether or not you can bring a case and you'd like to speak to somebody about it, we're here for you. You can find us on the web at zarzaurlaw.com, or you can call us at 855-HIRE-JOE. Thank you.